I wanted to ask you a little bit about our transformation programs. For example, when we're doing a transformation for CRM plus an RCA plus an ERP, what's your philosophy in terms of how much structure teams need versus flexibility within their operating systems?
Yeah. And a lot of these large transformation involve multiple platforms with like Salesforce and NetSuite integration platforms. And so it's very important that we're planning out what the overall business application architecture needs to look like and what systems should be taking on what responsibility for their portion of the business process, where those handoff points are, and how we're ensuring that the data that needs to be shared amongst all of these systems in the platform is controlled in such a way that we're ensuring that we've got integrity of the overall end-to-end business process from lead to contracting through billing and all the way through collections as well as revenue recognition.
As you know, RSM is coming up with a readiness offering for our clients. And I wanted to ask a question in terms of why readiness is such a crucial, maybe probably the most crucial phase ahead of a technical implementation for something like a CRM or ERP or CRM plus ERP for a full transformation.
Yeah. So I'll answer this question probably with an example. So a lot of times when we start off with our clients, they might have already made a decision on their tech stack. So let's just say they're going Salesforce and NetSuite, and they're confident that they know what they sell and how they sell it until we get into that system implementation. And that's when we kind of notice the gaps in terms of that strategy for the future state. So a lot of times we're seeing their products are proliferated. They have one product that they sell 10 different ways. They don't have a bundling strategy in terms of how do we want to go to market with the packaging of our products and services in the future state. Pricing still lives on offline Excel sheets. There's no collaborative decision around what booked revenue means to the company. And that is the piece that we really want to focus on as part of readiness, because if we go ahead and systematize all of the variability that they have in their business today, we're essentially automating that variability. And what that causes is, an expensive rebuild 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. So I see readiness not as a delay of the transformation, but to your point, Alex, an integral part of the transformation phases. So every transformation should really start with readiness. We should know what the business decisions are, how we want to run the business in the future state, and all of that should really be signed off on by your management, your executive team, before you even move into the design and build around the technical side. Ultimately, it's one thing to be live on your future state systems. It's another thing to be live on your future state systems that are going to drive the business to grow and scale, but also give your business visibility to make informed decisions in the future.
Yeah, readiness is very important in any kind of implementation or engagement because, one, you need the participation of the client and the broader team of the client. So maybe not only the executive leaders, but those folks that are going to be using the systems or are, very critical to those processes, and their voices need to be heard. And a lot of times when companies go through these transformation projects, they're maybe trying to do this in a very quick way, but they aren't always kind of realizing that there's kind of a rationalization and change management aspect that has to happen as well. So, best practice would probably be to sort out your processes up front, try to clean up as much as you can before you kind of dive into a brand new system implementation. The good thing is RSM has a lot of tools that we can help accelerate that, and some of our teams also, are more focused on process and can evaluate the processes either from a data perspective or just a leading practice perspective, and kind of help align the client and all of their people to those best practices.
The topic of Greenfield has been something that's been explored by companies because we've built ourselves kind of into corners within our current system. So a lot of people are evaluating the opportunity for getting into Greenfield environments. What do you think is the biggest mistake companies are facing when they're thinking, okay, let's go Greenfield?
Well, in a system implementation gives you a unique opportunity to look at your processes and look at how we're operating the business and think about it differently in light of the new capabilities. If all we're doing is putting the same processes in a shiny new piece of technology, we're not actually extracting all of the value that transformation could give us. And so what I want people to think about as they're embarking on these transitions is, how do I not do it the way I've always done it? How do I do it better? Readiness comes in a couple of forms, right? And two of the biggest areas are process readiness and data readiness, right? And process, obviously, we want to make the processes as efficient as possible. We want to keep as out of the box as possible. And where we do need to do customizations or extensions, we want to make them a light touch, as opposed to re-engineering and coding for an entire process. On the data side, usually what we're finding is clients have data that's spread between multiple systems that may not have been well controlled. And really what we want to make sure is that we're not pushing garbage into the new system, right? We want to push clean data in. And so thinking about that data conversion strategy and where we're sourcing that information from and how we're creating those golden records that ultimately need to go into the new system is very important.
Okay, so this is a theme that is very popular recently. How do you balance the tension between speed to value and doing things the right way?
Well, speed to value and doing things the right way should not be mutually exclusive. But when we think about speed to value in these large transformation projects, usually what we need to think about is, how do we phase? But the first thing that I want to make sure of is that we're starting with the end in mind. We're starting with, what is our North Star of what this business application architecture looks like. Then we can start planning out, how do we actually create building blocks of capabilities that we might be able to deploy for a particular client, so that we can actually start getting value out of pieces of the system without waiting for a 12-month or an 18-month big bang. And to do that, what we're looking for is natural breaks in the current business process. Maybe we're coming from multiple systems and we're going to say, hey, I'll convert the stuff from system A before I go and attack system B. Or maybe it's, hey, I'm doing it by geographic region and different legal entities. But understanding, how do we create stepping stones that get us to that end vision without creating a lot of interim process cost in terms of managing processes that are not fully deployed with the new solution.
That is a challenge, and a lot of our clients want to move fast and get to the end point very quickly. At RSM, we do try to understand their business processes and learn what their outcomes and their goals are for the project, while also trying to understand their overall business strategy and roadmap. So that will allow us to kind of align with their timelines. A lot of times projects might need to be phased, and we can kind of work with the client to figure out the right timing. But you definitely do not want to sacrifice quality over just getting something in quickly, because there's certain aspects of each company's business that might be nuanced and probably needs a little more time to develop and understand and align to whatever tool is being chosen.
We see a lot of problems that companies face with their scalability. It's a pervasive issue in the tech landscape. How do you design for that scalability when the client's operating model is potentially still evolving?
Yeah. And part of that is taking the client on a thought experiment journey of understanding where they might want to take and do new monetization models, right? Are they looking to pivot to consumption? Is it Is it consumption with some base minimums, right? Because we always have this tension between, the nice predictable ARR as well as the opportunity for increased revenue that is represented by enabling consumption models, right? And so generally what we're trying to do with clients is get them to think about how they might want to scale the business, what that might look like, but also try and make sure that we're creating processes that are simple enough to scale. Anytime a client introduces significant complexity, they're introducing significant cost and they're introducing barriers to scale.
So speaking of finding a balance between things that are quite difficult during implementations or engagements, how do you design, whether it's an ERP or a CRM or whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish, for that scalability and as much future-proofing as you can, while the client's business processes or go-to-market strategies might still be evolving?
Yeah, I think the good thing is a lot of the tools that we directly deal with, like a NetSuite or Salesforce.com, are built for scalability, and you can start with them with a very small footprint, and they're able to kind of scale and grow with you as you're kind of moving along your company life cycle. I think the key is, in the beginning, figuring out where each company is at and what their immediate growth goals are so that they're right-sized with those systems and they're not overbuying or overextending, software licenses or other things where sometimes they just need to kind of wait until the business evolves to a more mature point and or maybe a certain scale where they start, having other more sophisticated projects or implementing more sophistication in their technology stack.
Makes sense. So the right tool with the right footprint size at the right point of business.
Exactly. With the flexibility to scale up, you don't want to overbuild because sometimes your business model may change and you've built a whole infrastructure that may not support what you're going to do in the future. So being a little flexible and maybe just letting the business settle in before you kind of start buying a lot of software.
So how do you approach designing for scalability when very often our clients, especially in the tech sector, have ever-evolving processes or go-to-market strategies or other things that they might be interacting with our solution?
And I think that's a good thing to think about. And I think a lot of clients forget about that when they're going through an initial implementation, right? So we're so focused on getting off of a legacy system that we look at what we have today and we forget to think about what's going to happen in 10 years and, where do we see our system evolving to and how much data retention are we supposed to maintain to have a good balance from a system perspective. I mean, I think specifically those are topics that need to be addressed during a discovery because you want to make sure that you have the policies and procedures in place to maintain that set of data going forward. And it also rolls back into like security. How much do we actually need to maintain to make our users' life a lot easier on a day-to-day basis? So I definitely think that those are topics that we cover with our clients to make sure that they have the storage capabilities and, from a pricing perspective as well to maintain that on a yearly, annual basis.